Hello everybody, this is Danny from Deep South Homestead on porch time today. Oh guys, what a change a few hours can make in the weather and everything. This morning we got up, it was 43 degrees here. Built a nice fire in the cabin this morning. Now it's 81 degrees. Can you just believe it, in like 6 hours it makes that much difference in temperature? This weather. Now we do have crystal blue skies. I mean, there's no chemtrails, there's nothing. It's crystal blue skies outside. And yes, I do still have sinus cold. Was perfectly fine over here the other day working. It started raining. I jumped on the tractor because I need to go to the house and get the generator out of the rain. And before I got to the house, my sinuses got raw. Don't know what happened. One of them freak things, you know. But it is what it is. Like we did a porch time here a while back. It is what it is. But anyway, I wanted to. It's always kind of interesting to come up with different topics and subjects and stuff. And I go a lot on about comments from y'all, emails, personal letters, stuff like that. Things you want to hear. And a lot of you say, Danny, I love hearing about the old ways or the old days. And so I thought about that. And you're right. You're exactly right. The bygone days are just that. They're gone. I don't see them ever coming back. I don't see the way of life, the way it used to be, coming back totally. Let me say that. Now, I do believe that some portions of it will come back. I believe there will come a time when we'll have to do a lot more stuff by hand than what we do now. And I'm going to talk about some things that I'm familiar with. And that is, a lot of y'all may know or you may not know, I don't know. I was a logger for 15 years of my life. And during that 15 years of logging, I saw so much change in technology that it was just amazing. When I first started out, I was running a heavy piece of equipment called a skidder. And I was pulling a 100-foot long cable, 3/4 of an inch in diameter, with 6 chokers on it. Now I would have to park that machine, get off, release the winch, and pull that cable all out through the woods. And I would have to hook that choker around different trees, and I would have to winch them all up behind this piece of equipment and then take them to what was called a loading ramp and get off of the equipment, unhook each and every one of them, get back on the equipment, winch the lead back up, and then go again. I did this for quite a number of years. During this time, I also toted a chainsaw. The days I wasn't driving a heavy piece of equipment, I was sawing logs. And I was cutting the trees down and cutting the limbs off of 6 loads of logs a day right by myself. That was what was required of me if I was going to get paid. Now, that was work. That was a lot of work, especially if you was in hardwoods. Now, it wasn't so bad if you was cutting pine timber. But cutting hardwood trees have a lot of limbs on them, and you better be on your P's and Q's if you're going to get your quota with a chainsaw. But then, mechanized equipment came along. We purchased a skidder with a grapple on the back of it. It still had the chokers, it still had the winch and all that on the back of it, but it had a grapple on the back of it. At that point, we would saw the trees down in the woods, and I usually throw all mine in one direction so the machine could just back up and grab the trees up by the butts. And I drove a grapple machine for quite some time. And I got where I was pulling, they call it bunching. I was bunching 9 loads a day of logs right by myself with a grapple machine behind the chainsaw. And did for quite some time. But then, from that point, we got what was called a fellow buncher. Now this thing had a collector arm on it. Well, first off, let me say this. We got a shear first. It was a skidder with a shear on front of it. You drive up to a tree and it would literally just pinch one tree off at a time and throw it in one direction. And we used that for quite a while. And then we determined, you know, a fellow buncher would be better than just a directional shear. So we bought a fellow buncher, and a fellow buncher could reach up and grab one tree down, cut it, and hold it while it reached to grab another tree and cut it and hold it. You could pick up 3 or 4 trees at one time and take and lay them all down in one pile. And that way the skidder with the grapple could back up and grab them, and you could just take off and go to the loading ramp. Well, you had to have a guy with a chainsaw going around sawing all these limbs off these trees. Well, we determined that it was too much for one man to try to stay up with all that machinery, because the machines would catch him in no time. So then we had what was called a delimber built. Now this was a giant, ours was made out of drill stem pipe. It stood up about 6 feet high, and it was about 16 feet long. And you fastened it with cables to 2 trees, and you usually have what was called a turn tree in front of it. You had to have a 3-tree thing, kind of like a diamond shape. And you would pull through there with the trees with the machine and line them all up with the one tree in the middle, and you'd back them through this delimber, and you'd break all the limbs off of them, and then go to the load ramp with them and drop them off. Well, when I finally got out of it, after about 15 years, people were using fellow bunchers at the loading ramp. They were using a machine that was a knuckle boom loader. It would actually reach out and grab the trees, and with the limbs on them, and reach out and lay it in and pull it through and just strip the limbs off of it, and then he'd lay it over there and cut the tops out of it and put it in the pile. It got to be really mechanized. But with all that being said, a lot of the physical labor was taken out of the heavy, hard work. Because I pulled a 3/4 inch cable that was 100 foot long every day for years. And it was a lot of hard work. But when all the mechanized equipment come along, man could up his production, and he could make a lot more loads of logs a day. But the downside to it was that equipment cost a lot of money, and you had to make X number of loads of logs a day in order to be able to pay for that equipment. And at the end of the day, we realized we really weren't bringing home any more money than we were when we were doing it the old way. So we got rid of a lot of our mechanized equipment and went back to just sawing by hand, and we kept the grapple skidder, and we just run 1 or 2 trucks instead of running 3 or 4. And we got 3 and 4 loads a day, sometimes 5. And at the end of the month, we had just as much money left over, if not more, than we did when we were running the big jobs, with a whole lot less stress. Now that's how much things changed just in the logging industry. Now, I moved from the logging industry to doing some sheet metal work, doing some, I've done sheet metal work on and off and still do some, over to doing construction work. The construction for me has done anything from putting in foundations to building houses to building cabinets. I wire, I do plumbing, I put on metal roofs, trim work, porches, decks, all that kind of stuff. I did everything. That's the reason I was a general contractor. I did that for 20-something years. And I saw how that changed. I saw the difference in the changing of tools. Now, when I first started, all the skill saws were made out of cast iron. Literally, you bought a Craftsman skill saw, it was a worm drive saw, and it was a sure enough saw. That thing would cut through anything. But as time went on, even the table saws were all cast iron, regular steel and everything. But as time went on, I noticed you could buy a commercial grade saw or you could buy a residential grade saw. And same thing with nailing guns and all this kind of stuff. I realized there were commercial ones and then there was the homeowner ones. And up to this day now, you get like 3 different grades of everything. You still get a commercial grade. You can get the residential grade, or you can get the weekend hobby grade stuff. And stuff's made out of aluminum and plastic and all that now, and it doesn't hold up. It doesn't last. As a matter of fact, I still have the first worm drive saw that I ever bought, and it still works perfect. But I've been through, there's no telling how many regular skill saws from DeWalt, Black & Decker, Ryobi, all these different Makitas, all these different things. I've been through piles of them. But that old cast iron Craftsman worm drive saw, it's still kicking. You know, you have to check oil in it every now and then, but hey, and it will cut you if you're not careful. But it still works. The bygone days, those days are gone, and I don't ever see us going back to doing those types of things again. But you know, it's not just bygone days with equipment and stuff like that. It's bygone days with people also. Friends, neighbors, acquaintances, and stuff like that. Like, used to, y'all remember, those of you that's old enough, you remember the weekends. Sometimes the men and the women would get together and people just go fishing on Saturdays and Sundays. They just go fishing. Go to a lake somewhere, a creek bank, sit up and fish all day, come home, have fish fry in the evening. Invite family over, something like that. You don't hardly ever see that anymore. Go to Grandma and Grandpa's house. All the old houses had porches on them, and there was a reason. They didn't have air conditioning in them. They sat on the porch in the evening times. Usually on Sunday afternoon, you could go by people sitting on the porch. You could stop and visit with family and stuff like that. And kids run and play, and kids mainly played under the house. And Wanda and I were talking about this the other day. We remember when we were kids, you had to sweep the yard. Now, my grandparents, and she talked about some of hers and how they had straw brooms or corn shuck brooms. You had to sweep the yard. If you had grass in your yard, you were trashy. I know that sounds silly, but it's the truth. If you had grass in your yard, you were classified as being a trashy individual here, because everybody kept the grass and the weeds out around their houses. And I guess that's why any more of the old homes burned than they did, was because they had no way for fire to get up to the house, because they swept the yards. It was just pure dirt everywhere, hard as concrete. And us kids, I can remember us running around playing. We'd go under the house and play with trucks underneath the house, because all the houses were built way up off the ground. And we just had a blast. The chickens was all up under the house and everything, you know, getting bugs. You didn't have no problem. Roaches and all like we have today. And we were sitting and talking about that, how the days has changed, and how the lifestyles has changed. Now everybody wants pretty green grass, and you got to have a lawnmower, you got to buy gas, you got to buy blades and belts, and you got to get it mowed, or you got to have somebody mow it. Then you got to have a weed eater, you got to have an edger, you got to have all this stuff. All this stuff was eliminated back then because you just had dirt. And you just took an old corn shuck broom or a broom sage broom out, and you just swept it off. Any leaves fell on something, you just raked them off there, and you just had good old hard dirt. Nothing fancy. Times has changed. And, you know, not only that, people have changed. People's personalities have changed. It's go, 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 or me, 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 or whatever, however you want to look at it. It's an isolated world. We live in a microwave society today. We want instant gratification. The old people saved, kept money to set to the side. When a piece of property became available, they bought it. Now people just run out there and they go, oh, I want that piece of property. And they run to the bank and they make a huge loan and they have to pay on it for the next 30 years of their life. And they sink themselves deep in debt, and they pay more interest than they do for the land, actually. And you know, that piece of property might have been a $1,500, $2,000 an acre. By the time you get it paid for, it's $3,000 and $4,000 an acre, you know, or more than that. You know, it's just amazing how we've digressed as a society. Relationships between neighbors, you know, used to. I remember when I lived across the road from where I'm at over here in my old house. I had a syrup mill and a furnace and all that kind of stuff. I could get out there and my family would get together. Well, I say my family, my wife, my kids, my mom, my dad. We'd get together. It'd be 20 degrees at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd go out and build a fire out there pretty close to where we was working at. And we'd start squeezing that cane about 5 o'clock in the morning by the light of the fire. And when we got 100 gallons squeezed, I'd go ahead and empty it into my baffle pan. Down at the mill, we'd go ahead and we'd squeeze another 100 gallons. And when I'd fire that thing off with that old lighter, and you see that black smoke like a locomotive go to rolling out that pipe, and you can see it going miles up in the sky. Well, people in the community knew what that was. And it wouldn't be long, within a couple of hours, 2, 3 hours, you'd see people come driving down my driveway. They'd get out. Most of them were older people, and they'd have a milk jug with them or something, and they'd come over and say, "Mr. King." I'd say, "Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Do you mind if we get a little bit of that cane juice? We need a gallon of it. Do you mind if we have a gallon?" And I'd tell them, say, "No, just go get your gallon on the spigot over there, you know." And that happened with many people, and they'd drink it, and they'd sit and reminisce about the days of old, and we'd be cooking syrup. Some people would ask, could they bring their cane over? I'd tell them, bring it on. We'd cook their cane for them. We'd have syrup. We'd make 100 gallons of syrup every couple of days or so. And it was community of people that got along. Everybody loved everybody. Now, you're lucky if you can get a neighbor that you can even talk to, much less trust, because it just does not exist. I mean, there's a few lucky people out there that's got good neighbors, but as a whole, it just don't exist. Everybody's about themselves, and they could care less about anybody else. And that's another thing, is a bygone thing. I mean, it's just gone. I mean, I used to live in a great neighborhood here, but now, there's a couple of good neighbors out here, but most everybody, you know, you can't deal with them, you can't talk to them, and they just very unruly people. And life has changed for a lot of people. And I know it's probably not I'm going to say this, a lot of it may not be their fault. It's just the society we live in is so fast-paced that they never have time to settle down and slow down. And us living the homesteading lifestyle here, we don't have to get up in the morning and go to a public job somewhere. We get up and we take care of what we got to do here. We raise our food, we raise our animals, and we survive right here on our own place. We're not out there. Our days of facing the world and beating the bush to make a living, we put that behind us. Now, we may have to do it again one day. I don't know if things fall apart, but right now we don't have to do that. And I'm thankful to the good Lord above that we don't. But we sit back and we watch people who do have to do it, and we look at how different they are. They don't know what serenity means. They have no idea of peace and quiet. If they don't have if they're not making noise, they're not happy. And the days of just living on a quiet farm on a peaceful place in the country is just over. Because of people like that. They don't know what it is to be quiet. They can't, if it's quiet, they go crazy. Their mind just starts racing and they start thinking about all kind of crazy stuff and they don't understand and they're just like, God, I just got to do something. I got to go somewhere. I'm so bored, and they just, it's horrible. It's just horrible that people have come to that. And, you know, I was talking to a guy the other day about this. A man's handshake used to mean something. My daddy raised me. The guy I was talking to, his daddy raised him the same way. That when a man gave you his word, it was his word. If he shook your hand, it was better than have it in writing on a piece of paper. But the world we live in today, you can have it in writing. It doesn't matter. People are so wicked until a person's word doesn't mean anything. They're just pieces of crap. I mean, literally, you can have your name on a document stating something, and they will go to court trying to stop it, and you agree to it. But you change your mind. What happened to when you reached out and shook a man's hand, and you said, "Sir, I got a deal with you, or I agree with you"? Man, that meant something. You didn't have to go sign a piece of paper at the bank. You didn't have to go to a lawyer and draw up a contract. If that man told you he gave you his word, it was good as gold. And Daddy always told me, he said, "Son, if a man goes back on his word, get away from him. Don't have nothing to do with him, because he's trouble. You can't trust him. He'll stab you in the back." And I've always lived by that. And it has always proven to be true. And the friend that I was talking to said his daddy told him the same thing. And he said, "Danny, that's exactly right." He said, I've lived it. I've learned it. I mean, I've experienced it firsthand several times in my life. And it saddens me when it happens to see that people have no more character about themselves than that. But those things are gone. Those kind of people are gone. Most of them. I'll say there's a few of them that's still left out there that if they shook your hand and told you that, you know, we agree on something, then they'll stand behind it. But as a whole, most won't now. They're more interested in taking care of themselves than they are anything else. I know my daddy, when we were going to move from where we were living, my daddy bought a piece of property, and we were the only people living there. In 12 years of living there, my daddy looked outside and saw 17 kids in his yard playing. And he looked at Mama and he said, "Isadore, we got to get out of here. There's too many people here." So my dad went looking for land, and he found a piece of property on the opposite side of town. He went and talked to the landowners about it, and they agreed to sell it to him. Now, it was a very, very low price because the house needed some work done on it. And my dad had a lot of heavy equipment, so he came in and pushed the land, cleared it, turned it into pasture where we could farm it and stuff like that. And we all jumped in, us boys, and we helped Daddy get the house built back up to what it needed to be, and we lived there. Well, my dad approached these guys about the land that was behind us, because there was a 20-acre pasture behind us. And Daddy just went to them and told them, says, "You know, if y'all ever decide you want to sell that, then I would like to have a shot at it, if you don't mind." And the men reached out and shook my dad's hand, and they told him, they said, "Mr. King, you got a deal. If we ever decide to sell it, then we'll sell it to you." Well, several years transpired, and a lot of people went to those guys wanting to buy that land, and they would not sell it. They said, "Nope, I have a deal with Mr. King up there. If I ever get ready to sell this, I'm going to sell it to him." Well, one day, my dad was sitting out there in the yard on a Saturday working on equipment. That's what you usually do if you're a logger. And one of these older gentlemen walked up to him and said, "Robert, you still interested in buying this piece of property back here?" And my dad said, "Yes, sir, I am, if the price is right." And he said, "Well, I've talked to my brother, and I think we want to sell it." Well, Dad perked right up. You know, he went over there and he says, "Well, do you know how much you got to have for it?" And he says, "Well, give me till Monday." And he said, "I'll come back Monday." And he said, "I'll come back Monday morning, as a matter of fact." And Daddy told him, says, "Well, I usually go to work." He said, "But if I know you're going to come, I will stay home that day." And he said, "Well, Mr. King, I'll be here Monday morning. We'll sell it." Well, the old man came back and he walked up to Dad. He told Daddy how much he wanted for the property. And my dad says, "When do you want the money?" He said, "Well, I'm in no hurry." He said, "Just whenever you're ready." And Daddy said, I remember my dad well. He said, "I'm ready right now." And he said, "Well, I don't have a way to town." And Dad says, "Well, how about I take you?" And the guy said, "Well, all right, if that's what you want to do." And so him and Daddy, I remember they jumped in the truck, and Dad told me they went to the bank. They got out and went into the bank, and they talked to the president of the bank. And my dad was always good. The bank would loan my daddy money on just a phone call. And Dad sat down with the president of the bank and this gentleman here, and the man asked him how much he needed, and Dad told him, and for how much land, and Dad told him how much land, and the guy just looked at him and he said, "Are you sure you're right about that?" And the older gentleman said, "Yes, sir." He said, "I'm selling Mr. King for that price." And when they made the deal, my dad said, the banker asked him, says, "Sir, where do you want me to put the money?" And the old elderly man looked at him and he says, "You know, I don't know." He said, "I give half of it. Let's break it 3 ways." He said, "I got a brother and I got a sister." And he said, "And I don't really need a lot of money because I'm not going to live a lot longer." He said, "Let's just divide it 3 ways. Give my sister a third, my brother a third, and give me a third." And he told them their names and their bank accounts, and the banker just deposited the money into those accounts. And the old man had to go to the bathroom, and my dad said the banker looked at him and said, "Robert, how did you do this?" And he said, "What do you mean, how did I do it?" He said, "The bank has been after that property for years because of its development potential." He says, "And they wouldn't sell it for nothing. And he just gave it to you practically." And Dad said, "I know, I couldn't believe the price." And he said, "That's the reason I didn't wait, I just came on." And the guy came back out of the bathroom and Dad took him home. And my dad, to show his appreciation, asked him, they were old men and their house didn't have any heat in it other than a fireplace. My dad asked him, said, "Sir," said, "can I cut you some firewood or something to help you out?" And the old man says, "Well, no, we don't need any firewood, but there's an old lighter stump out there. We've said for the last 20 years, if somebody cut that off for us, we'd pay them." Well, my dad, being a logger, had a saw in his truck, and he went out there and got the chainsaw, and he went and cut it off and cut it up into pieces that could be managed, and brought it up to the house and stacked it up for him, and went and put his saw up, and the man says, "Well, how much do I owe you?" And my dad says, "Sir, you don't owe me nothing." And he said, "No, sir." He said, "Now, I told you, for 20 years ago, we said we'd pay somebody. Now, we're going to pay you, or you can leave." And my dad, being the wise man that he was, he told him, he says, "Well, you know what? $10. $10 will be sufficient." And they went in the house and followed around in there for, Daddy said, it seemed like 15 minutes. They come out with a $10 bill and handed it to him and said, "Mr. King, we appreciate that. Thank you so much for coming over here and cutting that off for us so that we got some kindling to start a fire with." Dad told me, he said, "Son, there's some people in this world that you can trust. There's some people you can't trust. There's some people in this world that if they say they want to pay you, you let them pay you. Because if you don't let them pay you, you've made an enemy, even though they were your friend. He said, I can't explain it. He said, but you're going to find that out throughout life. Be wise in how you deal with people. If they don't keep their word, stay away from them. If they want to make a deal and it seems too good to be true, make it right then. Don't wait. Strike while the iron's hot. And he says, always stay in good with the bank. And try to always treat people the way you would want to be treated. Unless they treat you otherwise. And I've always lived by that, and my daddy's words were wise. It's never failed me. When I bought all the land here that I bought it from elderly people that was a lot like this man that my dad dealt with. When I went to pay for this land, I asked them how they wanted the check made out, and they said, I don't know, just divide it amongst the kids in my family. Unselfish people. Today, people would be like, no, write it this way or write it that way. I want it, I want it now. The mentality of people has definitely changed. The world we live in today is a lot different than the world it used to be. I feel sorry for my grandkids and my kids. My kids are getting to live some of the life that I've lived. My grandkids will probably never get to live the life that I've lived. A life of freedom. A life of being out of debt most of the time. I don't think they'll ever know what that is. I don't think they'll ever know what it is to have kind, loving neighbors. Because we're living in the latter days of an age. And the Bible says that the love of many will wax cold during those days. And we're seeing that happen now. And it's sad. But the Bible says it's going to happen. It says people will be lovers of pleasure, boasters, blasphemous. There'll be all these things that list as that they will be. And it's sad to know that we're probably living in that age. But there's nothing we can do about it. God has preordained it. It's going to happen. We can just try to be the best that we can be and try to line ourselves up with people that are somewhat like-minded. We can't push our ways on other people, and we can't let them push their ways on us. But we can try to live as godly and as close to people and as close to God as we can and be as good as we can. There's one thing I learned in life. You can't change the other person. They are what they are, and there's nothing you can do about it. So guys, I've been going on long enough. I just enjoy when I'm in the cabin. I enjoy it over here so much. It's so peaceful right now. It's kind of quiet. The dogs are not barking. They've been horrendous the last few days, but they're okay right now. I've got a moment that I can actually get in here without any noise, and I can do a video, and I can enjoy it. So, guys, look, thank y'all for joining me on Porch Time. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for the encouragement that you give. And thank you for the directions that you point me in, the things that you want me to talk about, the things you don't want me to talk about. Thank you for giving me the direction. And then I take that and I go to the Lord with it, and the Lord just seems to line these things up for me. So I really appreciate each and every one of you, and I want to tell you how much I appreciate you now. I love you. Thank you for joining me on Porch Time today, and thank you from Deep South Homestead.